Speed, pace, momentum, velocity. Our world is increasingly fast and our culture is immediate. Everything moves quickly. Moving your money shouldn't be any different. With Gravity, you can buy and sell Bitcoin instantly. We're building the Bitcoin bank of the future today.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Bitstocks podcast. Today's a bit of a special one. It's potentially the birth of a new series. So let me know down in the comments below if you guys liked what you see, and then we can do another one. It's going to be with myself, Elia Yousif, and my co-host, who's newly joined us over here at Bitstocks, Manny. So without further ado, Manny, why don't you introduce yourself and let the world know who you are and where you've been.
All right. I always said the first time I'm officially on this side of the camera, I'm going to use the same word as that Matthew McConaughey first used on screen. So I'm going to keep true to myself on that one. But yeah, my name is Emmanuel Alamu. I am head of product and sales at Bitstocks. And the journey it's taken to get here is one I want to kind of take the viewers through.
Let us know a little bit more about your journey and how you got to this point.
Yeah, so definitely. So for me, I graduated in 2013. I started in Goldman Sachs. I was working in foreign exchange, working in traditional finance, and loving the kind of work they were doing there. It was a kind of trading floor experience. Great place to start to understand sales. I was selling really structured derivative products and understanding how to sell that to hedge fund clients. And it was particularly on foreign exchange. So I was very close to the digital asset space already.
Banking, right?
Exactly. So an investment banking kind of style. And we were already moving to a place where electronic FX was going to be taking a bigger realm of what we were doing day to day. And it's in that time that I started to realize and understand that the innovation that we believed we were doing in this space was actually a lot less than people believe. You know, there's a big ecosystem, there's a big machine, there's a lot of cogs and wheels to what is going on there, but the actual industry as a whole doesn't really have the innovation that you would believe for what it does and how much service it gives to the citizens of the world. And it's in that time I started to understand about Bitcoin. Now, this is May 2017 when I first really started to research into it, and I learned a lot more about what Bitcoin is actually trying to do. It's not just the funny money, it's actually trying to recreate a whole new economic system. Of course, that took some time for me to get there, but I could see the spark of that when I was in May 2017.
When did you first hear about Bitcoin? So where were you? What moment in time were you? Like, what were you doing when you first came across this? Did someone introduce it to you?
So I'll be honest, when I first heard about it, I dismissed it. You know, we all go through that where we're like, this can't work. This can't work. And only after then researching it again, which was May 2017, is when I really started to understand the depth of where this can go. I took the leap of faith and, I left banking in June 2017 and actually got into Bitcoin in terms of personally, from a financial point of view, in August 2017. And I've really just been going deeper down the rabbit hole since.
So right in a special moment in time when all of this whole debate really did start to begin, and I think you must have joined right in the heart of all of the controversy with the block reward.
Exactly. So I really joined in a really contentious time, and a lot of things were happening at the time, which we're going to talk about later. Yeah. And I was trying to understand, why is this happening, and what is the different parts about Bitcoin? And at this time, I'm still just trying to understand Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? And this is all happening around August 2017. I started in the first company in October 2017, and this was a digital asset trading firm. So this was very similar to what I was doing in the banking side, but it was a lot more focused on how do we allow kind of a first dealer platform and allow people to be able to go online, buy and sell different cryptocurrencies and be able to hedge their risk effectively. And that was great in terms of allowing companies to be able to make money, to be able to hedge risk and to kind of build an OTC business. But in terms of what we're actually trying to do for humanity, it was still towards speculation. The next place I ended up working for was a derivatives exchange. So this was a place where, we're trying to allow, again, market makers, trading firms to be able to buy and sell and to be able to make their money. But of course, again, at the same time, it's not utility. This is just we're trying to buy low, sell high, and try and make some money in between without actually really adding value to the world at large. And the different perspectives that's given me in terms of working at these different companies is we've been in speculation for most of the time that we've been in this space so far. And now I'm at Bitstocks since December and heading up product and sales. It's really trying to find how do we build consumer-facing applications that really build on the power, the scale, and transparency of what Bitcoin is, the true Bitcoin is, and what it can do for humanity in terms of empowering individuals to be sovereign. And
it seems like there's been quite a shift because, as you said before, you was working a lot in the speculative world where you was essentially just opening access. Whereas now you're a lot more involved in actually looking into, okay, what makes Bitcoin Bitcoin? Why is this special? Why are we trying to build something for humanity? What really does make it? And what was that turning point for you? Because I do know some people it does take a while for it to really trigger and say, hold on, there's something bigger here. There's something which, I can be part of a change. Where was that moment for you?
I think for me, it was more in a sense of realizing that the kind of overarching theme to most of my career so far has been buy low, sell high, and understanding that in terms of actually building utility, it's really been about so far speculation and trying to allow people to trade and make money. And the key difference is realizing what are the incentives and what they're working towards. I think I was a little bit disadvantaged when I first got into the space. I felt disadvantaged because I felt, I'm here trying to learn computer science and cryptography and all these other things, and starting to believe that is the core of what Bitcoin is, when really that's actually the kind of a bit of a misnomer and a bit misdirection. The actual core tool of Bitcoin is around economic incentives. And I think this is what we'll delve into in this podcast.
Yeah. No, I really like that. Well, since we're talking about histories, I wanted to start a little bit more about my history as well, because a lot of people don't really know me that well. I've not been in front of the camera too much. I've not really spoken about my history. Mine is very much entwined and linked with Bitcoin. I first got into the cryptocurrency industry in 2010. Well, I say got into the industry. This is when I first heard about Bitcoin.
You were early bird.
Very early bird. Very early bird. I mean, I still do remember coming across the white paper, and same as you, I completely dismissed it. It was one of those things which I read, and I thought it was quite cool from quite a nerdy techie aspect. That's the first thing that I tend to look at things from. So the first thing I thought was that, I could try and mine this. This looks quite cool. I never really saw what the economic incentives were. I never thought it would become a system where it is today. And my journey has evaluated over time as I started to learn more and more about Bitcoin and understand that Bitcoin is a system which completely flips money on its head, essentially. Now, early 2010, when we're talking about me first hearing about Bitcoin, that's actually quite coincidental because that's when Satoshi first introduced the 1 megabyte block size limit. So, I mean, I had no idea what a block size limit was back then. I wasn't there at the time. I wasn't looking into it. But the more we start to look at the block size and we start to look at histories, there seems to be a very stark difference between where we were back then and where we are now, where we now have 3 different factions of Bitcoin. We've got clear different groups and ideologies, and also very clear different incentives, different economic incentives between the 3 different projects. Now, what I really did want to touch on is all of these 3 projects, which we will go on to later on, but kind of first start with the beginning.
Yeah,
so
taking it all the way back,
all the way from the beginning.
I mean, to understand how do we get to this present point?
Exactly. Because right now we are in such a state where I don't believe everybody fully understands how we got here. Just for you yourself, when you first got in, did you know what was happening with the hard fork? Was it something that just threw you?
I mean, I kind of jumped into it, as I said before, August 2017. And this is kind of a really key point for Bitcoin in particular, because this is where we had the first split of Bitcoin into different factions, and it was contentious, and I was just in the deep end trying to figure out exactly what was going on and where the actual value was and what this actually meant for Bitcoin, and I didn't even understand the history of it. So
exactly, because I mean, that wasn't the first time the block size was debated. If we go back until 2014, we had Bitcoin XT, which was headed up by a young developer by the name of Mike Hearn, which I'm sure you must have heard of at the time. Mike Hearn proposed that Bitcoin would scale to 8 megabytes on chain, as he saw a target of 24 seconds for transactions. So he wanted to change the transaction throughput to 24 transactions per second, which, great. Back in 2014, we started to have these discussions. He was completely shut down, which led to the infamous Mike Hearn, right? Where everyone said, Mike had a big hernia and he completely left this space. He declared Bitcoin experiment as failed. We won't go too much into detail, but we saw exactly what happened with that. So if we fast forward a year, 2015, SegWit, which everyone now knows, was first proposed. Now, this is going to play a very big part in the scaling debate. And I don't think a lot of people really do understand how much SegWit had a role to play in these different factions. Well, why we do have Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV today, because it seems to be that's the controversial point.
That's the controversial
right?
contention.
That's
point,
the one,
right?
changing the way Bitcoin transactions work. That's the real sticking point there. So if we now go to 2016, SegWit's been proposed for a year. They've been working on it. We've had an agreement by I believe it was 40 different companies in the space.
So it was really like a consortium type
it's a
approach.
consortium. The Bitcoin, I think they called it the Bitcoin Roundtable.
Yes, exactly.
So this was in Hong Kong when they said, okay, we want SegWit. We want to implement this scaling solution, SegWit. But then we still had the aspect of the community which wanted a hard fork. They wanted a 2 megabyte increase of the block size. Now, when I say hard fork, for everyone who's not fully aware, hard fork is when you change the way the Bitcoin protocol works to a point where every single person on the network must accept this change or be kicked off the network, essentially.
So
which
like
is
a software upgrade which is not backward compatible.
Exactly. It's not backwards compatible. So if you do not upgrade, you could then essentially fork off
and
create your own network, which we did see happen later on down the line.
Exactly.
So that was all agreed. Everyone said, hey, look, we want SegWit and we want a 2 megabyte increase. Now, we want these to happen side by side, which was the big agreement, because we had one side saying, hey, SegWit, and the other side say, okay, we'll give you SegWit, or we will accept SegWit if we get 2 megabytes. Mm-hmm. Now, this debate carried on going for numerous amount of years. We then had a big breakdown in talks, right? Everyone disagreed. They said, no, we don't want the hard fork. We don't want this. And this is where we started to get this real sticky situation in the community where we had censorship happening on loads of different social platforms. Reddit, for example. I mean, Bitcoin, the subreddit. If you spoke about anything to do with block size increase, you was moderated or censored.
This is when they started to actually curb free speech in a way.
Exactly. And at that point in time was a very important point for us here at Bitstocks, because one thing we all were, especially myself and a lot of people here that currently still work at Bitstocks, is where we were Bitcoin maximalists. Yes. We did believe in Bitcoin. Now, we made a decision in 2015 where we stopped what we were doing and we started researching what was happening. We said, right, we want to know exactly what's going on. We started looking at SegWit and we started looking at a on-chain solution. We said, okay, if Bitcoin is going to be a global economic system, what way do we believe that this is going? And then the more and more we looked at it, the more I looked at SegWit, I just saw it as this way of changing the way Bitcoin worked. And I didn't know why at the time. It just didn't sit right with me. So we're now 2017.
So this is kind of where I'm coming into it.
Right? We're in 2017 now.
Exactly.
Everyone's saying, hey, we want a hard fork. We want 2 megabytes. And it was agreed for November. If I'm not mistaken, everyone said, look, we're going to activate SegWit. We've got 6 months and we're going to get a 2 megabyte increase. Everything seemed like it was going fine. We had another agreement, the New York agreement now. So everyone seems to be making agreements.
Exactly. And that's kind of where I actually jumped in because
so that's May, right? So that's May. That was consensus in New York.
I really understand what was going on in that space.
So how was that for you? Because you must have jumped in and thought, hey, what's going on in this industry now? Like, seriously, these guys are a bit, like, what's happening? What is this hard fork business?
Yeah, I mean, and I always say is 6 weeks in this space is like 6 months in any other industry. Things just move so fast.
Exactly.
So, I'm just learning about things in, June 2017. And by the time we get into July, August 2017, we're already splitting into multiple Bitcoins. And then by the time we get to November 2017, we're reneging on deals that 40 plus companies have come together on in May 2017. So
Exactly.
we're ending up in a place where the space is moving so fast. And in terms of the actual Bitcoin camps, people are making decisions on ideologies and philosophies so quickly. And trying to keep up with that is kind of the key difference here. And this is what we're going to, look into
exactly.
now.
Because I mean, 2017 was the big year. BCH hard fork happened. We saw, or the community saw, that they weren't going to get what they wanted. Nobody was going to get the hard fork on Bitcoin that they truly wanted, a increase of the block size. So we had Bitcoin Cash, the birth of Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah.
It went from straight away to 8 megabytes.
Yeah.
And the big argument was, hey, 8 megabytes is a bit too risky. You can't propagate that sort of blocks where we're not ready yet. There's not enough infrastructure. And BCH did prove at that moment in time the arguments against a block size increase were false.
Yeah.
Essentially, it was working, and you can do it, right? You can scale on chain. Now, let's go a year later, where 2018, and now we have another hard fork, and we've got the hash war about to embark on. And I mean, if everyone wants to learn a little bit more about the hash war, we did do a video which explains it quite in detail. So we will link that video down below. Feel free to watch that video to understand a lot more about the hash war. But how were you feeling? Because at that moment, where were you in that moment in time during 2018? Where were you working?
So this is actually, I was in, working at a digital asset trading firm and trying to see, which companies or which parts of Bitcoin were going to win was still one that was in discussion. Every single day, everyone's trying to figure out how are we going to move forward if we keep splitting into different camps and not allowing people to understand, people who are looking into the industry, that we're actually an ecosystem that needs to work together.
Exactly, yeah.
And, that time was really contentious for me because I had to start to understand a lot more about what Bitcoin truly is and what it truly wants to be. And, reading the white paper multiple times, trying to really understand what Satoshi was pushing for. And in that time, I realized, I don't think BTC is going down the right way with regards to scalability. And a lot of the discussions we've had now just about this history has really been on scalability.
Exactly.
It's like, are we going to increase the block size, or are we going to make layer 2 solutions like Lightning Network, which is always 18 months away?
We're still waiting, right?
We're still waiting for that.
Waiting.
So trying to make solutions that are easy for people to use who are not in this system. We want to be able to use things at scale and that work and have the right economic incentives for all players on multiple layers of the system. And BTC, I realized, didn't go down that road, and this is when I started to lean towards Bitcoin Cash. And what's your view on in terms of Bitcoin versus BTC?
I mean, at the time of the hard fork, when we start to see Bitcoin Cash, it was a real interesting point, because at that moment I was convinced we had to scale on chain. It was the only way I saw Bitcoin truly taking its potential and really actually reaching its potential. It had to scale on chain. The more I looked at it, very important parts of Bitcoin's economic incentive requires on-chain scaling. And it's just how I see Bitcoin working. You have the miners, you have the developers, and you have the users. They form a cog, and this cog works harmoniously. And this is what keeps the economic system moving. Right? And the moment you try to dislodge one of these cogs is the moment you have an issue with the whole system. So I was happy with the BCH hard fork because we got rid of SegWit, which to me, I just didn't really understand why that was proposed as a solution. We had this whole transaction mailability, which was a non-issue it still is a non-issue, but it was such high priority over something which in 2017 we saw fees reach all-time highs to the point where Bitcoin was unusable.
Exactly.
You couldn't use Bitcoin.
That's affected you guys as well.
Exactly. At that time, I think we spent $30,000 in transaction fees, and that was it's something. As a business, you make a decision when it's okay. We are a business who support this space. We work within this space, and we actually do use the blockchain. For us, we couldn't sustain paying those transaction fees. So that was a big moment when we said, you know what, enough's enough. You have to scale on chain. And now we're 2020 and we still don't have a block size increase on BTC. We're still waiting for the Lightning Network. And I believe SegWit adoption is not yet at 100%. I mean, this was stuff that we were promised back in 2015, 2016.
Exactly.
It's, this industry, exactly what you said, it moves very fast. So...
And it's amazing because, as you said, when these fees started to increase, the narrative around what BTC was and what Bitcoin should be changed.
Exactly.
And this is when we ended up in a place where we talked about 1 megabyte blocks is good because it means that we can be a digital gold and we can be the kind of system that allows people to move only high value transactions, and you can pay the high fees because it's definitely cheaper than doing, using Swift or other things like this. But that was not exactly what the white paper suggested in the first place. So you can see the narrative tried to shift
cash
to just accommodate for the fact that the developers that were on Bitcoin did not understand the economic incentives. And this is what pushed a lot of us into looking at Bitcoin Cash.
Exactly. And it was essentially, we would never have looked at Bitcoin Cash. We would never have seen a necessity to do that if we had known, if we knew that this would be accomplished on Bitcoin. It wasn't. And this, I want to go back to a point that you just made where we started to see different ideologies really start to take place from 2017. We saw this, hey, we need a fee market now. We started to see this, a socialist ideology coming out of the Bitcoin core camp where, everyone needs to be able to become a miner, even though everyone couldn't participate, because if you wanted to purchase a coffee, for instance, you'd pay more in value of fees than it was in the underlying coffee you were buying.
Exactly.
So
that just doesn't scale.
It's just not a scalable thing. And we started to, 2018, we started to see BCH really start to come into its own ideology, this anarchist system where anonymity was starting to become prioritized in BCH. And it was something which, when you look at anarchism, and I'm sure everyone would vouch for this, in an anarchist world, it's not a world I would want my kids to grow up in. So the more you start to think about it, you start to think anarchism is definitely not the way.
Exactly. And it's more of the way that our experience so far may have influenced our decisions. We kind of sometimes slip into anarchism when you believe that you don't need a government. But then you realize, no, you do need government. We do need to work within government, and we need to make sure that any system or any kind of new economic system or currency that we want to build grows. It needs to be within government. Yeah. And this is what BCH went wrong. And this is where the Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin Satoshi Vision, BSV, started to split and diverge.
Exactly. And we started to see these clear different, now we had capitalism, which emerged. For me, the first time really it did emerge was from BSV.
Yeah.
When we started to see this capitalism, everybody has to compete. Essentially, Satoshi's original model, right? One CPU, one vote. The moment you're not competing, you're no longer
you're out of the race,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly that. Miners, this is something that miners' economic incentive, their economic incentive is to grow their power, essentially, so they can keep and become relevant.
Exactly.
And that's something that you can't really, you have to look at that because it has its viable points. It's a viable system.
Yeah. And you mentioned before already, Bitcoin Cash creating an environment where if anonymity prevails, it's an environment where the lawless and the corrupt can move forward and, get involved with kind of things around money laundering, get involved with things around human trafficking, really dangerous industries where you can't see what's going on.
Exactly.
And it's in darkness.
And
what we have with Bitcoin Satoshi Vision is one where we can actually be, as you said before, apolitical, but purely capitalistic, where everybody is competing to be able to ensure the system grows and everyone's working together within government, working with government such that government does allow you to have your privacy.
Exactly.
But at the same time, you are able to also track things if there was some sort of cause for money laundering, etc. So it allows us to kind of break away our identities from our transactions, but still in a place where governments can see what's going on. There needs to be light. And this is where Bitcoin Satoshi Vision actually comes in line with what it should be with regards to...
Now, you made a very good point there, and I do want to just touch on that, and I want to ask your opinion. Now, privacy versus anonymity. Now, that's a very tentative subject. What's your take on it?
For me, I realize when you look at BCH versus BSV, is one that if you have all these kind of mixing of transactions, anonymous transactions, and ones where you cannot trace it, it doesn't allow people to be able to work in government, and doesn't allow government to be able to have a handle on things that are happening across their system.
Yeah.
And we just have to make sure we understand the difference between anonymity and privacy. Privacy is something that Bitcoin Satoshi Vision does enable. It does enable you to buy your, £2 coffee at Starbucks and not have that tracked to you.
Yeah,
it kind of divorces your kind of transactions away from your identity, which is exactly what we should have, and that's okay.
Would the government want to know about you spending £2 to buy a coffee? I mean, I don't think those are the transactions that people need to worry about.
Mm-hmm.
And the big thing for me is with this space, the legitimacy of our space is in question multiple times. Yeah. I mean, we have been fighting to get bank accounts. We have been fighting with regulators, and we've been, right? That's the first thing. If you're in the cryptocurrency space, the one thing that you would take for granted is the ability to have a bank account.
Yeah, exactly.
A simple, basic bank account, right? To operate in and out of as a company. And that's the thing that we've been fighting for a lot in this space. We see ourselves as a legitimate industry who we do not believe that we should be, judged because we deal in, digital assets, essentially.
And that's good, because it means that now we're in a place where we are working with government with regards in the BSV ecosystem. We're working with the FCA, we're working with
regulators,
within money laundering directives that come out. And as a result, this gets us to a place where we can be mature as an industry, we can actually grow it, and we can allow people to actually see the benefits of what Bitcoin is.
Exactly.
As opposed to what it's been
Bitcoin's
so far.
true potential. I say that so much because Bitcoin's potential is completely untapped. We haven't even seen what Bitcoin truly can become. And I believe everyone here is trying to fight this fight where against regulators and against governments where they don't really truly understand Bitcoin and what Bitcoin can become, and I believe will become. And we need to be able to work with these different organizations. We've got companies such as Chain Analysis who are doing a very good job right now in helping law enforcement understand the blockchain,
how to navigate it
exactly, and understand a lot more about understanding how the transactions truly do flow. Now that is a very important thing because it does give a little bit more comfort when you're talking to a regulator or when you're talking to a bank, and I think that gives a very good line between anonymity, because we've got assets such as Monero, which is very notoriously known in our space for this anarchist, crazy, completely private, completely anonymous token. Which, I mean, when you think of that, would you want that? Is that the form of money that you would want to use today?
No, not at all.
Right?
That's the thing. You need light. And I think this is what Bitcoin and any economic system that we try to build, the true Bitcoin should provide light. And when you're getting to a place where you provide light, this works within government. This allows people to have the right economic incentives within the system that allows it to grow. And as a result of that, it allows us to really get to a place where we have the true version of what Bitcoin is and what Satoshi said in the white paper. And this is where we believe that BSV is that true Bitcoin.
Hope you enjoyed that. In the next part, Elia and I will shed some light on the drivers behind the upcoming shift in focus on price to focus on utility. If you like what you heard in part 1, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and look out for part 2.